What the Spaniards came and saw in California, they described as looking like a well-tended garden. It looked like that because it was. The people had lived with the plants, had lived with the animals, and had evolved an ecology based on bringing what they needed close to their home villages. To maximize the growth of that through our land management techniques, to keep it growing in close to the village, to bring game in close to the village so they didn't have to go farther and farther afield. And that's our ecological knowledge. What plants are used for food, what plants are used for tools, what plants are used for medicine.
This is the human story of the environment that you may be learning through science, but traditional ecological knowledge is a way of life. It's a role that we have learned for thousands of years. And now that role has been taken out of the equation, it's out of balance. And so now science is trying to figure out how to put things back into balance. And this is where traditional ecological knowledge can play that role once again.
California is a beautiful, amazing, diverse place, both in terms of its cultures, but nature too, with everything from the coast to coastal ranges to inland valleys to the Sierra Nevada to the deserts that makes it one of the world's hotspots for biodiversity. Historically, the development of this settler colonial society and the modernization of it, there arose a conservation movement that resisted that development. And here in California, most vividly embodied by John Muir. And in the late 19th and early 20th century, advocating for the conservation and preservation of nature as temples where we could approach God's creation. What Muir saw in California was really three Californias. One, the cities where commerce happens, where most people live, the surrounding countryside of farms and ranches and mines, this economically productive landscape that was changed for human use. And then the cathedrals of nature beyond, where nature would be protected and where we would go to visit, but leave little trace that was separate from people, that was separate from culture.
We can see the natural world as something to exploit, or we can see the natural world as something to keep precious and protect. In both of those cases, humans are separate from nature. Traditional ecological knowledge is a different perspective of knowing a place or knowing the natural world. TEK is not just information, it's how people do things. It's how people practice their culture, right? It's how you go and collect material for a basket. It's how you actually go fishing or set up your society within a particular place.
Traditional ecological knowledge is stories that were passed down for 10,000 years from our ancestors. These stories traditionally teach botany, science, the things that are necessary, but we didn't learn these in universities. These were things that were taught by people that practiced them for centuries. When we hear a story about how to collect food in the forest, these aren't just guesses, they are proven techniques that have been practiced for thousands of years.
In California, there's no one traditional ecological knowledge. There are hundreds of different cultural groups in California, and the way that they interacted with the environment is obviously going to vary with local conditions. It's going to be different in the desert than it is in a redwood forest.
If you are a people living in the same place, the same region for 1,000 years, you've watched the turn of the seasons, the migrations of animals, birds, insects, fire regimes, and how they move through plant life, all of those things together, how we gather our plants, how we are able to subsist, all of that encompasses tech.
Conventional science kind of comes out of this Enlightenment view of the world where man has dominion over the natural world. We are very separate from it. We will understand it to conquer it and have control over it. Whereas TEK scientifically is just as correct as conventional science, but it looks very different, and it really places humans as part of the natural world.
I think traditional ecological knowledge is an important concept, but we should be careful about the traditional part of it because it's just as adaptive, it's just as changing, it's just as modern as we are.